My name is Leila Marquez, 34, and I'm a senior architect who's poured my heart and soul into every blueprint, every design, every single thing I've built. Last month, I flew back to Manila for what should have been my sister's engagement party at a luxurious private villa in Tagaytay. What started as a meticulously planned celebration for her turned into a surreal nightmare. My younger sister, Sofia, standing there, champagne flute in hand, her eyes glittering, used her engagement toast to make a cruel joke about my recent very painful divorce. It was a punch to the gut, in front of our entire family and her fiancé's prominent circle. Little did she know karma was about to deliver a swift public blow. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in Cebu, our family had a comfortable life, built on my parents' successful textile business. We weren't extravagant, but we lacked for nothing. My parents, Elena and Miguel Marquez, were always meticulous, always focused on appearances and the family name. From an early age, the family dynamic was painfully clear. I was the responsible eldest daughter, the quiet achiever, while Sofia, 5 years younger at 29, was undeniably the favored, the flamboyant, the fragile one. The pattern started subtly. When we were kids, I'd get practical gifts for birthdays, art supplies, sensible clothing, occasionally an architecture textbook. Sofia would receive the latest designer bags, exclusive toys, and gadgets that our parents would stretch their budget to afford. "Your sister is more sensitive. She needs more encouragement," my mother would explain, whenever I quietly questioned the disparity. This dynamic extended beyond material things. When I brought home straight A's from my rigorous architecture program, it was simply expected. When Sofia managed to pass her fashion design courses, there were lavish celebrations and shopping sprees. I drove our family's old dented sedan throughout college. When Sofia turned 18, Dad surprised her with a brand new luxury SUV in her favorite color, despite her having no license yet. The unspoken expectation for me to support Sofia became the bedrock of our relationship. I was told to let her win arguments because she was too emotional. I was expected to share my allowance, my clothes, my space, while Sofia's possessions remained exclusively hers. When I got my first internship at 19, working grueling hours, at a design firm, my parents suggested I use some of my earnings to buy Sofia the expensive art supplies she claimed she needed for her ever-changing hobbies. College was where I really started to break free. I applied for every scholarship imaginable, worked 2 part-time jobs at coffee shops and drafting agencies, and managed to attend the University of the Philippines Diliman without family financial support. Those were challenging years, studying until 2 a.m., sketching late into the night, and interning during summer breaks. But they taught me self-reliance, perseverance, and the true value of earning my own way. I graduated at the top of my class with honors in architecture, with minimal student loans, a feat I remain fiercely proud of to this day. My career journey began at a small, demanding firm in Bonifacio Global City, where I worked 60-hour weeks, fueled by passion and a burning desire to prove myself. When an opportunity knocked in the form of a position at a prestigious international architectural firm in Singapore, I took the leap. Over 8 years, I climbed from junior designer to senior project architect, each promotion earned through sheer results, relentless determination, and countless sleepless nights. My financial independence was hard-won, a fortress I built around myself. But even across continents, family expectations lingered. Dad would call about helping with Sofia's latest business venture that inevitably failed, or Mom would hint about contributing to Sofia's apartment rent when she decided to move out, and then back in multiple times. 3 years ago, everything in my personal life changed when I met Ben. He was a brilliant civil engineer, kind, steady, and he saw me, not just the responsible daughter, the supportive sister, or the driven professional, but Leila, the woman with dreams beyond blueprints. He loved my quiet strength, my passion for design, and understood the complex family dynamics I navigated. With him, I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time. We married in a beautiful, intimate ceremony in Bali, far from the pressures of my family. It was everything I had ever dreamed of, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. But life, as it often does, threw us a curveball. The pressures of long-distance work, conflicting project schedules, and a subtle but growing distance slowly eroded our bond. 6 months ago, after painful conversations and countless attempts to bridge the gap, Ben and I decided to divorce. It was amicable, heartbreaking, and deeply personal. I moved back to Manila, bought a small, beautiful condo overlooking the city, and immersed myself in my work, trying to heal. I kept the divorce quiet, only sharing the news with my closest friends. The thought of my family's reaction, their pity, their judgment, Sofia's inevitable glee at my failure, was unbearable. I knew they would find a way to spin it into another example of my shortcomings, another reason why Sofia was the lucky one. Despite the complicated dynamics, a part of me still yearned for my family's support. I fantasized about my mother offering a comforting hug, or my father simply saying, "We're here for you." I even imagined Sofia, for once, being genuinely empathetic, perhaps offering a shoulder to cry on. These dreams felt increasingly unlikely, but I couldn't quite let them go. Sofia's engagement party was meticulously planned. My parents, eager to showcase Sofia's happiness and her fiancé's wealthy family, spared no expense. They reserved a private villa in Tagaytay with stunning views of Tall Lake. I flew in from Singapore, trying to brace myself for the inevitable family drama. I bought a new emerald green dress, had my hair professionally styled, and even splurged on a small, thoughtful gift for Sofia and her fiancé, Paolo. I wanted the evening to be about celebrating her, about finding a moment of peace and familial connection. How painfully naive that hope would prove to be. The evening of the engagement party began, outwardly, perfectly. The Tagaytay breeze was cool and gentle. The fairy lights strung around the garden shimmered against the twilight sky. Paolo, Sofia's fiancé, was a handsome, reserved man from a prominent family, with kind, if somewhat nervous, eyes. He seemed genuinely devoted to Sofia. My close friends from Manila arrived first, offering warm hugs and discreet words of comfort about my divorce. My colleagues from the new firm also attended, bringing a sense of professional normalcy. When my parents and Sofia walked in, 20 minutes late, I pushed aside the familiar twinge of annoyance. My mother immediately commented on my dress, a backhanded compliment that implied it was too somber for an engagement. My father whistled at the price of the catered food, already counting figures. Sofia, draped in a white, off-the-shoulder gown that looked suspiciously bridal, was glued to her phone, only looking up when Paolo gently guided her towards me. "Leila, you made it," she said, offering a quick, superficial hug, her eyes already scanning the room for more important guests. "I didn't think you'd come, considering, you know." Her voice, though low, carried a sting, a subtle jab at my recent life changes. I forced a smile. "Of course I came. I'm happy for you." I introduced them to my friends and colleagues, trying to keep the conversation light, but I noticed Sofia constantly interrupting, directing attention back to herself, her wedding plans, and her fiancé's family connections. Dinner progressed, through multiple courses of gourmet Filipino cuisine. The sinigang received particular praise, and the conversation flowed, mostly centered around Sofia's upcoming nuptials. I tried to genuinely engage, feeling a flicker of warmth from the presence of so many people I cared about, even if my family's presence remained a cold spot. I noticed Sofia whispering excitedly with Paolo and my mother throughout the meal, a glint in her eye that made a warning bell ring in my head. After the servers cleared the dinner plates and the dessert, a magnificent tiered cake, was brought out, Paolo stood to propose a toast. His words about Sofia's beauty, spirit, and their shared future were genuinely heartfelt. Friends and family members followed with their own kind memories and wishes. Then, Sofia stood, a triumphant glint in her eyes. "To my amazing fiancé, Paolo," she began, her voice ringing clear across the villa's garden. "And to all of you, for celebrating our love." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, finally landing on me. A knowing smirk played on her lips. "And speaking of celebrating love, or perhaps the lack thereof," she giggled, a harsh tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "It's been a tough year for my big sister, Leila. She recently got divorced. Bless her heart." A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs went through the crowd. My friends shifted in their seats, their faces a mix of shock and sympathy. My parents looked down at their plates, pretending not to notice. My face burned, a hot flush spreading across my neck and chest. The villa, just moments ago filled with the joyful chatter of celebration, felt suddenly silent, the air thick with tension. I could feel every eye on me, every whisper, every unspoken judgment. It was a humiliating public spectacle. "But hey," Sofia continued, oblivious to the discomfort she had created, "at least she's free to be a strong, independent woman now, right?" She made air quotes around the words, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "No more pesky husband to tie her down. More time for her architecture blueprints, I guess?" She laughed again, a little too loud, a little too long. My vision blurred. I felt Jason's hand, my close friend who supported me throughout the divorce process and was seated beside me, find mine under the table, squeezing so tightly that I knew he was suppressing his own furious reaction. And to that, Leila, Sofia, finished, lifting her champagne flute higher. "I hope you find happiness. Eventually. Maybe even a husband who sticks around this time." She winked, a cruel, triumphant gleam in her eyes. The silence that followed was deafening, thicker than anything I had ever experienced. It stretched, taut and agonizing. Paolo, who had been standing beside her, a gentle smile on his face throughout her earlier gushing, now stood frozen, his smile slowly dissolving into a look of profound horror. His eyes flickered from Sofia to my ashen face, then to his own family, whose expressions ranged from stunned disbelief to mortified embarrassment. Then it happened. Whether from shock, disgust, or pure divine intervention, Paolo's hand trembled. The delicate velvet box he was holding, containing a truly enormous diamond ring, the one he had just shown to everyone moments earlier, slipped from his grasp. It didn't just fall, it bounced once, twice, hitting the marble floor with a sickening clatter, and then, with a tragic plink, it rolled directly into the decorative koi pond at the edge of the dining area. A collective gasp swept through the guests. Sofia shrieked, a high-pitched, indignant sound. Paolo stared, his mouth agape, at the spot where the ring had vanished into the murky water, his face paling to an alarming shade of white. My parents gasped. The perfectly orchestrated party descended into immediate chaos. Servers rushed forward. Guests peered into the pond, and Sofia began to wail, a truly dramatic and self-pitying sound. Paolo, still pale, took one look at her hysterical display, then at his mortified parents, then at the pond, and then back at Sofia. His expression hardened. Without a word, without even a glance at the ring that was now lost to the depths, he turned on his heel. He pushed past the bewildered guests, through the main doors of the villa, and was gone. Just like that. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The immediate aftermath was a blur of frantic activity and escalating drama. Sofia's wails intensified, a siren call for parental intervention. My mother rushed to her side, murmuring reassurances while my father began barking orders at the villa staff to retrieve the submerged ring. Paolo's parents, refined and dignified, looked utterly mortified, offering profuse apologies to me and discreetly trying to manage the unfolding disaster. My friends and colleagues, who had been silently observing the entire humiliating scene, now rallied around me, offering quiet support. My friend Jason, who had been sitting beside me, simply squeezed my arm and gave me a look that said, "Let's get out of here." I, however, felt a strange sense of detachment. The humiliation of Sofia's toast still stung, a raw wound exposed to public scrutiny. But the sight of Paolo's abrupt departure, a direct consequence of her cruel spectacle, brought a peculiar kind of vindication. It wasn't triumph, not exactly, but a deep, quiet satisfaction, a cosmic rebalancing. My mother, finally tearing herself away from Sofia's dramatics, approached me, her face a mixture of concern and thinly veiled accusation. "Leila, what was that all about? Why would Sofia say those things?" Her tone implied I was somehow complicit in my own public shaming. "Ask Sofia, Mom," I said, my voice steady, though my hands still trembled slightly. She was the one delivering the toast. My father, his face flushed with anger, joined her. "You should have handled yourself better, Leila. You provoked her. This is your sister's special night." He completely ignored Sofia's part in the debacle, twisting the narrative to make me the culprit, as always. "My special night was hijacked," I stated, my voice gaining strength, "and her fiancé just walked out because of it. Perhaps she should have handled herself better." The implication hung heavy in the air. My father's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He merely turned back to the koi pond, shouting at the staff to hurry up and retrieve the ring. Sofia, having exhausted her initial burst of theatrical tears, now directed her fury at me. "This is your fault, Leila. You ruined everything. You're just jealous because I'm getting married and you're divorced." Her words were laced with venom, echoing the very insult she had just publicly delivered. "I'm not jealous, Sofia," I said, a wave of calm washing over me. "I'm just tired of being your punching bag." In that moment, standing amidst the chaos, a profound realization settled upon me. This wasn't about the ring, or the party, or even Paolo. This was about a lifetime of Sofia's entitlement, enabled by my parents' unwavering favoritism. It was about her need to always be the center of attention, to diminish anyone else's happiness, to elevate her own. And I, for too long, had allowed myself to be the victim of her narrative. But not anymore. Paolo's parents approached me, their faces etched with genuine distress. "Leila, please accept our sincerest apologies," Paolo's mother said, her voice soft but firm. "We are absolutely appalled by Sofia's behavior. This is unacceptable." Paolo's father nodded solemnly. "Our son, he is a good man. He deserves better than this." Their words, delivered with quiet sincerity, were a balm to my raw nerves. It was the validation I had unknowingly craved, not from my family, but from outsiders who saw the truth. Meanwhile, the villa staff finally managed to retrieve the ring from the pond, a dull, mud-stained lump in the net. Sofia gasped, then burst into a fresh torrent of tears, shrieking about how it was ruined. Paolo's parents looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them, a look of resolute determination. The next morning, the villa was eerily quiet. Sofia had locked herself in her room, refusing to come out. My mother was flitting between Sofia's door and the kitchen, trying to coax her out. My father, surprisingly, sought me out. He found me on the veranda, sketching a new design idea on my tablet, the cool morning breeze a welcome reprieve from the previous night's emotional storm. He sat down opposite me, his face grim. "Leila, we need to talk about last night." His tone wasn't accusatory, which was a marked change. It was heavy, laden with a forced seriousness. Sofia is distraught. Paolo, he's not answering her calls. I'm not surprised, I said, without looking up from my sketch. Her toast was cruel and inappropriate. She didn't mean it that way, he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. She was just excited and nervous. You know how sensitive she is. The familiar excuse. I finally looked up, meeting his eyes directly. Dad, she stood up at her own engagement party and publicly mocked my divorce, in front of Paolo's family, in front of my friends. That wasn't sensitivity. That was malice. He flinched. It was a mistake. She'll apologize. Will she? I challenged, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. When has Sofia ever truly apologized without being forced to, or without turning it into a reason for her to be pitied? His silence was telling. He cleared his throat. Regardless, we need to fix this. Paolo is from a very influential family. This marriage is important for Sofia, for us. So it's about appearances again, isn't it? I asked, my voice dangerously low. It's never about the emotional damage she inflicts, just the potential embarrassment to the family name. He looked away, fiddling with his watch. Leila, you know how Sofia is. She needs us to handle things for her. She's not like you. You've always been so strong, so independent. His words, intended as a compliment, landed like a backhanded insult. And what does strong and independent get me, Dad? I questioned, my voice rising slightly. It gets me ignored, taken for granted, and expected to clean up everyone else's messes while my own pain is dismissed. He finally looked at me, a flicker of something resembling surprise in his eyes. That's not fair, he mumbled. We love you. Both. Do you? I pushed back, a lifetime of suppressed grievances bubbling to the surface. Or do you just love the idea of Sofia being pampered, and me being the quiet, capable one who always supports everyone else? He sighed, a deep, weary sound. This isn't productive. The point is, Paolo is threatening to call off the engagement. Sofia is heartbroken. We need you to talk to him. Explain that Sofia didn't mean any harm. She needs your help, Leila. The audacity of his request stunned me into silence. After everything that had happened, they still expected me to be Sofia's fixer, her cleanup crew. No, I said, my voice firm and unwavering. I will not. My father stared at me, disbelief etched on his face. What did you say? I said no, Dad, I repeated, standing up, my posture straighter than it had felt in years. This is Sofia's mess. She made her bed. She needs to face the consequences, and she needs to be accountable for her own actions for once. I'm done being her shield. My father's face hardened, the mask of concern replaced by familiar indignation. This is what happens when you spend too much time alone, Leila. You've become selfish and cold. You've forgotten what family means. No, Dad, I countered, shaking my head. I've just finally learned what self-respect means. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the stone floor. He looked at me for a long moment, a cold fury in his eyes, before turning and walking away without another word. The silence he left behind, this time, felt liberating. The following weeks were a whirlwind of family drama, none of which directly involved me, and that, in itself, was a victory. Paolo, it turned out, was true to his word. Despite frantic calls and tearful pleas from Sofia and my parents, he formally called off the engagement. His family issued a short, dignified statement citing irreconcilable differences. The news spread like wildfire through our social circles, the story of the broken engagement and the koi pond incident becoming an instant, scandalous legend. Sofia was, predictably, inconsolable. She blamed everyone but herself, Paolo for being too sensitive, his family for being snobs, and of course me for not defending her. My parents, once proud and beaming, now seemed perpetually stressed, trying to salvage their daughter's reputation and manage the fallout. They alternated between lecturing Sofia about her poor judgment and chastising me for my lack of family loyalty. But their words, once so impactful, now felt hollow. Their power diminished. The more they pushed, the more I pulled away, creating a much-needed emotional distance. I immersed myself in my work, finding solace and purpose in designing beautiful, functional spaces. My new condo became my sanctuary, a place where I could truly be myself, free from judgment and expectation. I reconnected with old friends, cultivated new relationships, and started seeing a therapist again. Dr. Reyes, a kind and insightful woman, helped me process years of buried resentment and the lingering pain of my divorce. "You've been carrying their emotional baggage for too long, Leila," she observed. "It's time to put it down. Your healing is your responsibility now, not theirs." I started taking care of myself in ways I hadn't before. I took up yoga, went on long hikes in the mountains, and spent weekends exploring the vibrant art scene in Manila. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to heal from the wounds of my divorce, not by ignoring the pain, but by acknowledging it, understanding it, and choosing to move forward. My professional life flourished. I took on a challenging project, designing a sustainable resort in Palawan, a project that demanded all my creativity and resilience. I learned to trust my instincts, to advocate for my designs, and to lead with quiet confidence. The strong, independent woman Sofia had mocked was, in fact, becoming the woman I was meant to be, not out of spite, but out of a deep, abiding respect for myself. The external drama of my family was still a presence, a low hum in the background, but it no longer dictated my emotional landscape. I was building my own life, on my own terms, brick by beautiful brick. Months passed. The initial furor over Sofia's broken engagement eventually died down, replaced by a strained, fragile silence within the family. Sofia, still reeling from the public humiliation and Paolo's definitive departure, retreated. She stopped her lavish social media posts, her usual flurry of party photos replaced by cryptic, melancholic quotes. My parents, their own social standing subtly bruised by the scandal, focused their energy on comforting Sofia and trying to subtly mend fences with Paolo's influential family, albeit unsuccessfully. I, meanwhile, continued to thrive in my work, leading the Palawan Resort project to a successful groundbreaking and taking on more high-profile international assignments. My name, Leila Marquez, was becoming increasingly recognized in architectural circles across Southeast Asia. Then, the calls started. Not from Sofia or my parents, but from other family members, distant aunts and cousins, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in years. The conversations began innocently enough, checking in, asking about my work. But soon, the true intent would emerge, wrapped in thinly veiled concern. "Leila, your parents are so worried about Sofia," my aunt would sigh. "She's just not herself. Maybe you could spend some time with her? She really looks up to you, you know." Or, "Your mother mentioned you're doing so well, a big shot now. It would mean the world to them if you could help Sofia get back on her feet." It was the familiar script, just with different actors. The subtle pressure to re-enter Sofia's orbit, to somehow fix her problems, to offer financial or emotional support, now disguised as requests for familial bonding. I handled each call with polite firmness, deflecting their suggestions and maintaining my boundaries. My healing had come too hard won to allow myself to be pulled back into their toxic dynamics. Then came the direct approach. My mother called, her voice uncharacteristically tentative. "Leila, Sofia is thinking of starting a new business venture, a high-end event planning service. She needs some seed money, and she was hoping you could advise her on the business plan." I almost laughed. Sofia's previous business ventures had amounted to little more than expensive hobbies that quickly dissolved into debt. "Advise her on a business plan, Mom, or fund another one of her whims?" I asked gently. She stammered, then admitted, "Well, she needs a substantial investment to get started, and with her recent setbacks, she can't get a loan." I politely but firmly declined, citing my own major financial commitments to my growing international projects and my investment in my own future. My mother tried to argue, then resorted to emotional appeals, but I stood my ground. The conversation ended with a familiar, disappointed sigh from her. A few weeks later, my father called. He sounded more desperate than usual. "Leila, Elite Celebrations is facing some serious challenges," he admitted, his voice tight. "We've lost several major clients. The competition is fierce, and frankly, our systems are outdated. We need a capital injection, and more importantly, fresh, innovative ideas. Your reputation is impeccable now. Could you consider coming in perhaps as a consultant? We'd pay you, of course, a significant amount." My old dream, my old ambition, suddenly laid bare. The family business, the one that had constantly diminished my worth, was now asking for my help. It was a tempting thought, a full-circle moment, but I immediately recognized the trap. It wasn't an offer of partnership, but a desperate plea for me to fix their problems without truly acknowledging their past behavior or my contributions. I politely declined, explaining that my focus was entirely on my current international projects and my architectural firm. He pleaded, even hinting at family duty, but I remained resolute. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. Then, one brisk morning, as I was reviewing plans for a new skyscraper commission in Singapore, my executive assistant, Miguel, buzzed me. "Ms. Marquez, there are some interesting applications for the senior operations manager position in the Manila office. I thought you'd want to see them personally." My firm, Marquez & Associates, was expanding rapidly, and we were always on the lookout for top talent. "Send them over, Miguel," I said, distracted. A few minutes later, the digital files landed in my inbox. I opened the first one. My breath hitched. It was a formal application, complete with a meticulously crafted resume. The name at the top read, "Sofia Marquez, my sister, applying to work for me." My eyes scanned the resume, noting a surprising, if rather embellished, list of skills and experiences from her various short-lived ventures. Her most recent employment listed was freelance event consultant. The cover letter was a masterpiece of corporate jargon mixed with subtle undertones of desperation, carefully avoiding any mention of the infamous engagement party incident. She expressed a deep admiration for Marquez & Associates' innovative approach and ethical business practices, and a desire to contribute her unique talents to a thriving, forward-thinking organization. I stared at it, a mix of disbelief and a wry amusement bubbling within me. Then I opened the next file. My jaw dropped. It was a formal application for a mid-level project coordinator position. The name, Javier Marquez. My cousin, the golden boy, of Elite Celebrations. His resume detailed years of experience in corporate event logistics and client management at Elite Celebrations. His cover letter spoke of seeking new challenges and opportunities for growth within a dynamic, progressive environment. The implication was clear. Elite Celebrations was in serious trouble. My phone rang. It was Miguel. "Ms. Marquez, there's a third application. This one. It's for an administrative support role, but the applicant has a rather extensive background in human resources and financial oversight." He sounded hesitant. "Who is it, Miguel?" I asked, a premonition washing over me. "It's a Mr. Richard Marquez," he replied. My father, who had sworn I'd never amount to anything, was applying to work at my company. His resume outlined his long career in high school administration, subtly rephrased to sound like operational management and staff supervision. His cover letter was brief, formal, and strikingly humble. He cited a desire for a new challenge and a respect for Marquez and Associates' exemplary leadership. I leaned back in my chair, the applications spread across my screen like a surreal tableau. My family, the very people who had belittled my dreams, dismissed my pain, and leveraged my kindness for their own gain, were now seeking employment at the company I had built from nothing. The irony was palpable, a bitter sweetness coating my tongue. This wasn't a strategic acquisition out of calculated revenge. This was them, recognizing their own dwindling options, turning to the very person they had always underestimated. It was a moment of profound, quiet vindication. I called Miguel back. "Schedule interviews for all 3 applicants," I instructed, my voice calm and even. "Treat them like any other candidate, no special favors, and make sure I'm in the room for all of them." The interviews were illuminating. Sofia arrived first, dressed impeccably, radiating an air of practiced confidence that barely masked her nervousness. She tried to charm her way through the questions, offering vague answers and emphasizing her passion and creativity over tangible skills. When I pressed her on her previous venture's financial performance, she stammered, quickly shifting the topic to her vision for event management. She avoided eye contact with me, only occasionally glancing at me with a flicker of resentment mixed with desperation. Her entire demeanor screamed entitlement, despite her current predicament. When she finished, I simply thanked her for her time. Next was Javier. He was more professional, more subdued than I remembered. He presented a solid, if uninspired, overview of his experience at elite celebrations. He acknowledged the company's recent difficulties with a vague hand wave. When I asked him what he thought he could bring to Marquez and Associates, he focused on efficiency and streamlining processes, practical but uninspired. He was clearly a product of their rigid, traditional business model. He didn't gloat. He didn't apologize. He just presented himself as a competent, if unexciting, candidate. There was a quiet hum of respect between us, an acknowledgement of shared work experience, however disparate our paths had been. Finally, my father, Richard, walked in. He looked older, his shoulders slightly stooped, his usual authoritative demeanor, replaced by a hesitant politeness. He sat across from me, his eyes carefully avoiding mine for the first few minutes. He spoke about his experience managing budgets, staff, and logistics in the school system, trying to frame it in corporate terms. He was clearly out of his depth in a dynamic, modern firm like ours, but he genuinely tried. When I asked him why he wanted to work at Marquez and Associates, he paused, then surprisingly looked me directly in the eye. "Leila," he began, his voice softer than I had heard in years, I've watched what you've built. It's truly remarkable. I want to be part of something that works, something meaningful." He didn't apologize for the past, not explicitly, but the underlying sentiment was clear. It was a quiet acknowledgement of my success, a silent plea for a new beginning. I listened to each of them, observing their desperation, their hopes, and the subtle ways their past attitudes colored their present behavior. The tables had truly turned. This wasn't about revenge. It was about defining my own path, my own future, and building a company based on merit, not on outdated family dynamics. I still hadn't made my decision about their applications, but the interviews themselves were a powerful, silent reckoning. The world they once ruled, the world where my light was always dimmed, now belonged to me, and they were knocking on its door, seeking entry. It was an unforeseen twist, a quiet triumph that resonated deeper than any public applause. If you've ever found yourself in a similar position, where the people who once dismissed you are now seeking your help, how did you navigate that shift in dynamic? I'd love to hear your experiences.